Hello, I'm Eric Light, and you're inside Chor Leoni. Hello and welcome to Inside Chor Leoni. My name is Eric Light, and I am coming to you from our brand new digs here in downtown Vancouver, St. Andrew's Wesley United Church, where Chor Leoni is now choir in residence. We are so glad to be able to do rehearsals here and our concerts here, and now we can even do TV shows from this beautiful location. So if you hear my voice echoing through the beautiful acoustics here, this is a real backdrop, not one of those fakey Zoom things. So yeah, it's really a joy to be here. Just a little bit of background on some of the conversation that we're going to have today. Chor Leoni for a number of years has done what we've been calling our Van Man Male Choral Summit. And part of that for a number of years is we've brought in some real luminary professional ensembles to be headliners for that festival. And in the past we've had Chanticleer, Cantus, Take Six. It's been really wonderful times of collaboration, of featuring those ensembles for our audience here in Vancouver, as well as working with our youth program called My Voice and our Emerging Choral Artist program. Well, COVID has given us a lot of time to think about things, and one of the parts that I really wanted to do was to really double down on the possibilities of working with professionals, but in those collaborative and educational aspects. So we have started a new endeavor of creating a once-a-year professional ensemble called the Leonids, and they will be having their premiere concert here in May 12th and 13th, right in this very room, and then on the 14th to be a part of our Van Man Festival at the Chan Center. And we're going to take the next couple of weeks here and introduce you to a lot of the singers that we have assembled for this really all-star roster, and something that I am so thankful to be a part of, and so excited to share with both Chor Leoni and our audience and our education programs. So I want to welcome to the program today Tenor Steven Wilson. Hello, Steven.
Hi, it's great to be here with you.
Oh, it's fantastic having you here, and I'm so excited to sort of bring you into this space a couple months early before we get you to Vancouver. Tell us a little bit about your musical life right now. So yes, you are a gigging tenor and do some things, but what is your artistic life comprised of right at this moment?
Sure. So I live in Pittsburgh, which is where I'm sitting right here in my home office. Very frosty. It was -1 here this morning.
That's Fahrenheit for all you all that. Yeah.
Right. That is Fahrenheit indeed. And I moved here in the fall of 2019 because I had been living in Maryland to be close to family. And before that, I was in New York City. But I really just got to a point where my career as both a freelance tenor and a member of New York Polyphony had afforded me what is kind of the dream of a lot of musicians, which is being able to live anywhere and go to the work instead of having to live where the work is, which is what I did for 8 years in New York City. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a life that a lot of people lead and a lot of people love. But I really love Pittsburgh. I love the vibe of the city. It's fairly cheap, really interesting and artistic. A lot of my friends live here. And so I moved here in the fall of 2019. I moved in with a very good friend, Andrew Fouts, who is the violinist for Chatham Baroque, which is based here. It's a Baroque trio. He's got this crazy old house, and I sort of helped him with some remodeling. He's one of my very good friends. And then everything shut down in March of 2020. And all my gigs were canceled. All of my touring was canceled. I was very lucky to have a job as the director of marketing and design for an arts nonprofit here in Pittsburgh, which is a presenting organization called Chamber Music Pittsburgh. We put on 3 series every year, including 6 main stage concerts at the Carnegie Music Hall here in Oakland, in Pittsburgh. All of those concerts were canceled. And then in the fall of 2020, we went to an all digital series which we did in the form of streaming webcasts and DVDs. So I'm really a tech guy. I do a lot of web stuff, and I taught myself how to make DVDs. That was pretty crazy. But now that vaccinations are happening and people have a much better understanding of how the virus is transmitted and how we can keep ourselves safe and test and safe travel and masking and things like that, yes, things are definitely opening up again.
You've sung in a number of major ensembles. Ensemble singing and solo singing seem to be going hand in hand in your career and your work. Certainly, that's something that I'm so excited about for our musical world here in North America. I want to just focus though a little bit maybe on the ensemble side of things for you. What lessons have you learned out of the ensemble singing that have made an impact on your life? Maybe not things that are just necessarily musical, but certainly being in small ensembles, intimate groups of people, larger things, whatever. What has been some of your takeaway from the perspective that you have been afforded because of your career?
That's really interesting. I've never thought of it in those terms. But I was immediately reminded, as you started asking your question, of I'm also a veteran of the Air Force singing sergeants in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I was immediately reminded of a quotation from my first conductor, a guy named Chad Steffi, who said, "The secret to success is to surround yourself with people who are better than you." And I never forgot that. And I really feel like the idea of ensemble singing is something that I believe everyone should have the privilege of being able to do, especially at this level where we are essentially all, I mean, if I could talk about the Leonids specifically, we are all world-class soloists, but also world-class ensemble singers. In fact, there are a couple of schools in the US now that are offering degrees in choral singing.
Which can you even imagine that 20 years ago? That weren't there when I was around, yeah.
Or imagine making a career doing that.
Right.
Even trying to ad hoc yourself a career as a choral singer 20 years ago, no one would have believed you. No. I do believe, though, that when you get into an environment where you are surrounded by people who have the same passion, the same love, and the same ability, you are all facing in the same direction. You are all going toward the same goal, and you're all truly supporting each other. I think that's one of the things that keeps me coming back to the Trinity Wall Street Choir. I sang there as a full-time member for 3 seasons, and I was just there Christmas Eve. I sang all of their Christmas Eve services. They're all dear friends and colleagues, but they're all equally as good and passionate about what they do. And to have that group of people all facing the same direction, literally, physically, and musically, there's a reward to that feeling. Same thing with Handel and Haydn in Boston. To put 38 pros on the stage, all at the same level and same place in their career. But I have to add a really interesting sort of other side of the same coin, and I'll use an example from my teaching days. I had a student who is a soprano, and she sings in one of the big choirs in New York. And she had been a soprano in this choir for like 30 years, really. She knew every part of every piece, all the masterworks, she knew it. But she was getting into the later part of her life, and her voice was changing, as everyone's voice does. And so the conductor had a private meeting with her and asked her, told her basically if she would like to stay in the choir, he would like for her to switch to alto. And she was devastated. She came to her lesson just like, and I remember her saying, "He knocked me down to alto." And I said, "No, he didn't. He trusts you enough as a musician to keep you in the choir. It's a huge task to have to learn a different part for all these pieces you already know." And it led us into this discussion about what is a choir, what is an ensemble. And it gave me a perspective of, I compare it to a brick wall. I know this is going to sound hokey, like I just made this up, but you can't build a brick wall with just bricks. You need foundation and mortar and someone to put it together. And so if you think that you're not important now because you're not singing the part you used to sing, and oh, he knocked me down to a different part. No, he wants you in the group and he trusts you musically, and you will be fulfilled by continuing to be a part of that. And so I think that, and she stayed, and we learned all the alto parts in our lessons. And it was really cool to watch that happen and to see how much joy being in that group brought her. And then to see that joy keep going, even despite her voice changing in a different part of her life. So I really do believe that it is oftentimes hard to find soloists who also work well in ensembles, but I believe the feeling that I get when I work in an ensemble at that level is something that I would never want to give up. I would never want to just be a soloist, because I really do love that. I love both sides.
Yeah, so much of what you're saying rings true to me. You know, my jam here is working with Chor Leoni, and Chor Leoni is a very fine amateur ensemble. But one of the charges that I take very seriously about what this community means and sort of what this choir can offer to people's lives is this lifetime of singing, of being a part of this community. And yes, we have voice people. You know, I do voice assessments every year with folks, and we're always talking about that because our voices do change. But that charge that I feel that I have to create a place for lifelong singing, where you're close to that artistry, you are close to one another, you're on that team pulling in the same direction, as you say.
Right.
No matter what the level, I think choir and ensemble singing can offer that this world to so many of us, and I think it's so important. I want to just switch gears a little bit, and you sort of mentioned this a little bit about the Leonids and the roster that we've created, and it's something I'm sort of over the moon about. You've sung with a number of the folks on the roster. Tell me a little bit about your feelings before we haven't even sung a note together, but looking at what's sort of on paper and assembled here with who's going to be in the room. What excites you about all of this?
I mean, it's really a dream team, truly. There are definitely names on the list that I don't know, but there's no hole in the wall. There's no loose brick out there.
There we go on the wall again. Yeah.
Great. I know. It's tacky. But no, I may have told you in one of our previous conversations, I did the Poulenc Figure Humaine, which is one of the great masterworks that is almost never performed because you literally need 12 soloists. And that was just an incredible experience. And to look down the row and to think, I know all these people and I know what they do and who they are and why they're here. I feel that when I look at this list, I know there's nobody. It's kind of this perfect storm of there's nobody that I can think of that should be on the list, and there's nobody on the list who I think of who shouldn't be on the list. It's just the right thing. And I love that you've described it as world class, because truly, I mean, you really have assembled a group of people who are going to come with their notes ready to work. It's going to be this beautiful crafting. I've already looked through all the scores. They are incredible. I will admit, quite frankly, that I've done a lot of new music, but it's not the primary focus of my career.
Right.
And so it's very exciting for me. I do love Poulenc. I love Britten. I love all of that modern choral writing. And so I'm really excited to do this and to be honored to hopefully be a part of this moving forward. I mean,
that's right.
I was for many years a permanent member of the chorale at the Carmel Bach Festival every summer. And my career just got to a point where I wasn't able to do it as regularly. But this is different. This is 9 guys. This is new music. This is stuff that was written for us. And I'm just at a different place in my career. That was probably 10 years ago that I was doing Carmel. But the feel of being a part of an annual thing where we come into a community with an existing dedication to this music, and we bring our experience and our teaching and our ability into the community. That part of it is very familiar from my experience at Carmel, and it's something that I really, really love doing. I love working with locals and amateurs, and really bringing that side of my experience as a teacher, as a coach. It's just wonderful. I love that.
And we're so excited to see. I've known even just the small amounts of time that we've had with the pro groups that we've brought in, how that's influenced and affected a group like Chor Leoni, and inspires us to do more. We learn a few things, we get some sounds in our head, but to build a relationship, which the more and more I do all of this in this world, in this musical world, maybe just as a human being, everything comes down to these relationships, and to have crafted a framework to try to do this. Now we have to do it. But I think, as you say, I think we've got the right folks on board to make some of these dreams that I've had about what if you did this try to do everything about all of this the right way. What would happen? I think we're at least on our way to that. I want to play a little bit for everyone here, a little bit of your artistry, and from a group that's near and dear to your heart, New York Polyphony. We have a recording that was done, I believe, last summer.
That's right.
From my home state of Wisconsin. Could you tell us a little bit about New York Polyphony and a little bit about the piece that we're going to hear?
Of course. So I have been the tenor in New York Polyphony since 2011. The group was formed in 2006 by four guys who were all in the choir at St. Mary the Virgin Times Square, otherwise known as Smoky Mary's. It is, they use a lot of incense. It's a beautiful, beautiful stone Catholic church in the middle of Times Square on 46th Street. You would walk right past it if you weren't paying attention. It's that sort of tucked away in Times Square. Jeff Williams, our countertenor, was approached by Malcolm Bruno, who is a producer and audio engineer, to get together a little quartet to record some incidental music for a passion play for Public Radio International. Oh, cool. And Jeff said, oh, well, actually, yeah, I've got that quartet in my little choir at the church. So they recorded the music, they gave it to the producer, he loved it, it went on the radio, the producer passed it to an engineer in London, who signed them to record a CD, and they were cart before the horse. They had a CD before they were even really a group, and the rest is really history.
It's like the Monkees. Yeah,
I know, it's incredible. And so they that first disc was "I Sing the Birth," and it's a Christmas disc, and 2 Grammy nominations and 14 countries and 40. I think 5 states later. We are really excited to explore the new future of New York Polyphony with our new guy Andrew Fuchs, who would be a Leonid. It was actually kind of it's a COVID story. In February of 2020, we were singing for Modfest at Vassar. And Chris told us in a meeting in the green room that his career and his personal life was really getting to the point where he needed to retire. And he was very gracious enough to offer to stay on through our tour of Japan in the summer of 2020. None of us could have predicted that would have ended up being his last concert with us at Modfest. And so in order to keep the group together, but to take a slight shift in the direction of what we can preserve and what we can start to expand into, Andrew was a natural ask. So we had a bunch of Zoom meetings and we had a bunch of phone calls, but last summer we were able to get together for a long weekend at the Nashotah House Seminary in Wisconsin, which is where Jeff is on the faculty. And it was our first time really as a quartet. Andrew has sung with us before on the Pope Marcellus Mass disc on Roma Aeterna. But it was really our first time together, just the 4 of us as an official thing. This is really the group now. And we had a few days of intense rehearsals And then we recorded this video. And this is In So Lord Jesus by Paul Mons, which is just incredibly beautiful. And one of my favorite parts of it is that, so Jeff is a true countertenor and I'm a true first tenor. I'm a very high tenor. I'm really not a countertenor, but there are places where his voice and mine do overlap. Yeah. And you'll hear that in the opening of the piece and then in the opening of the recapitulation of the main theme in the middle of the piece.
It's one of my favorite smaller works of all time. It's just, and done so beautifully. This is New York Polyphony featuring Steve Wilson, and they are singing Paul Mons's "E'en So, Lord Jesus, Quickly Come." Peace be to you, and grace from Him, who freed us from our sins, who loved us all and shed His blood that we might save thee. Sing holy, holy, holy to our Lord, the Lord Almighty God, who was and is to come. Sing holy, holy, Lord. Rejoice in heaven, all ye that dwell therein. Rejoice on earth, ye saints below. For Christ is coming soon. For Christ is coming soon. In so Lord Jesus, quickly come, and night shall be no more. They need no light, nor lamp, nor sun, for Christ will be That was E'en So, Lord Jesus, Quickly Come by Paul Mons, sung by New York Polyphony. Just beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. I needed that. It's one of those pieces, and I hadn't heard it in an awfully long time, I've got to admit. So that warmed the cockles of my heart. One of the main reasons we're starting this group is to work with Chor Leoni, and I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here in terms of maybe what you kind of understand about our ensemble, but also maybe the ideas of what you know on the program of how we're going to be collaborating with some new works, one by Don McDonald that's been written specially for this collaborative group of artists together. But what is it going to be like for you having this kind of big TTBB group and small TTBB group coming together for a number of projects?
Well, and you can edit this out if it's silly, but one of the first things that jumped out at me on the program when I was reading your email was the "Wake Me Up" by Avicii. That's going to be incredible because that's
it's a
like
great arrangement too. It's a wonderful arrangement.
This like dance hall like techno banger, and I can't wait to hear a choir of men sing it. That's going to be incredible.
Yeah, it's actually the arrangement's been slowed down to like a ballad. It's actually quite a heartfelt sort of reimagination of that piece. But I've always loved that song in its original form. But this is definitely the kind of the choral version of it anyway. So yes, but there's some good stuff on there.
There is a stunning performance of another dance hall banger, Believe by Cher, being sung to Cher by Adam Lambert, and who's one of my favorite singers. He's just incredible. And he sings it like this heart-wrenching ballad just by himself with maybe a piano.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing to take a piece, I'll call it a piece, that I
absolutely.
would never think of as a piece of beautiful, melody, and to pull it apart at the seams and say, okay, what makes this a great song, even though it started its life as a techno track? Let's take it apart and make it something, and it's instantly recognizable. I mean, everyone's heard it in a store or on the radio or in a club. So that's really exciting. But to your question, I really feel like this is going to be, it's going to be new for me to work with a group of this size of all male voices, because I've worked with smaller male groups. I did some singing with the Army Chorus in DC, which is all men.
Yep.
But I also am excited because I do a lot of work as a section leader in New York City with Amor Artists, which is fairly large. I think they are maybe 70 or 80 mixed choir of volunteers. And their director, Ryan Brandow, is one of my very close friends. And he brings in maybe 8 or 9 pros for the couple of rehearsals and then a concert to be section leaders throughout the choir. So, and he works at a level with these amateurs that they really want. They tell him, we want to work at a level that challenges us. And it's amazing to watch people respond and to listen around and think, these people really are amateurs, and it doesn't sound like it because they are so dedicated to what they're doing, and they are listening to the pros that he has strategically placed throughout the choir. So I can imagine something similar to that. I also think it's exciting, not to bring Carmel back into the picture, but we would do these union kind of concerts with the local chorale that we had been working with for 3 weeks. We would do a concert where we do our own thing as the smaller group of pros, and then we would go into the larger group and sing with them for a larger piece. And so I really believe that the volunteers, the amateurs, if you will, get the experience of singing with us in their midst, but also to hear us sing on our own. And I do also think it's exciting because I did read, as I saw the Avicii song, I did read through the program listing of everything we'll be doing. You're not programming kids' table music for them. This is not going to be like, oh, we're singing the hard stuff and they're singing the easy stuff.
No, in fact,
it's tough.
Maybe quite not the opposite, but it's hand in hand for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I really believe that the enrichment that they get from not only hearing us sing difficult music, but then from singing it themselves is really going to be invaluable. It's very exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to play everyone. It's been a while since we've played a new thing from Chor Leoni on this show, and I want to play a piece by a composer that we've had on the show before, and that the Leonids will be singing a work from, composer Melissa Dunphy. The Leonids will be singing a piece of hers called "The Elements of the Sung," which comes from the second book of Enoch, one of those apocryphal books of the Bible.
There are
some not in the Bible. Yeah.
There are some really illuminated texts on this program. Very exciting.
Very much, yes. And and when you get to talk about Chackeldry and phoenixes, who are all these interesting mythical beasts, that's pretty much something. But this is a work that Chor Leoni recorded just this last fall, and we did it on our Remembrance Day program. This is Melissa Dunphy's setting of Waves of Gallipoli, and it's outlined with a poem on the beginning and the end of the work, but the middle section of the piece is all done with tombstone inscriptions for those that served and fell in the Battle of Gallipoli. This is from composer Melissa Dunphy, Chor Leoni singing. That was Waves of Gallipoli, composer Melissa Dunphy, Chor Leoni singing. Love that work, such an evocative piece, and everything that she writes is that way. And she's a composer that we're all going to be having more relationship with in future years and concerts. I just love singing her music. Steve, one of the major aspects of this, yes, so there's going to be collaborative aspects with Chor Leoni in terms of us singing together on these new pieces, etc. But we're also going to be working with our My Voice program and our Emerging Choral Artists program. You've spoken a little bit about some of the educational aspects that you do in your life, but let's just kind of get into not the what you do in your life, but why. Why is this important to take some of the things that you learn, let's face it, the hard way, doing it as a pro, and what can be passed on, what can be gleaned, what can be shared to a singer who's maybe been singing for 30 years as an amateur, but also maybe as a young singer who's at their very first choral concert, which may be the case for some of our young singers in the My Voice program.
Sure. I have done a lot of teaching, both individually and chorally as a coach on my own and with New York Polyphony. New York Polyphony does a lot of educational programming. We will often do a concert in a city with a really great choral program at the high school or college level. And I can say quite directly that I did not have a choral program at my high school. So when I go into a high school with New York Polyphony or on my own, and I see these incredibly dedicated 16-year-olds who are singing really beautifully and musically, who've been studying with choral directors and private voice teachers their whole life, it makes me very excited for the future of our career field, because right. I wish that I had had that exposure when I was young. I was an instrumentalist my whole life growing up. I was a pianist and a French horn player. I just believe that I have had to do this all really on my own, and I would love the opportunity, and I do love the opportunity to share my experience with younger singers, with amateurs, with people who really don't necessarily have the sort of wherewithal to do it themselves necessarily. And there are little things that I like to share with singers in rehearsals that I believe help. Little markings and things that I make in my music that I think are great shortcuts. Just little things like that where people say, "Oh, okay, that'll make my life easier." And it's those things that I've really had to teach myself that I can pass on, and that I kind of wish I had when I was 18.
Right.
I mean, I wish I'd had a choir in high school. I really do, and I've said this to many. I've said this to whoever will listen to me, that I'm very glad that I did have the instrumental side to my being, to my musician development. But when I go into a high school with 3 different choirs and 4 choir directors, and everyone sings, and they're doing huge productions in the fall and spring, and I look at that and think, I wonder where I would be if I'd had that in high school. But I'm pretty happy with how things turned out.
I'm glad. You don't want to have too many regrets.
Right.
I think one of the dreams that we have with doing this festival, the Van Man Festival, and I think it's one of the things that our audience really enjoys when they come to this to see, is especially those young people, old people, professionals, amateurs, thrown into the same mix. But for me, it's always about watching the faces of those young people, maybe singing that one piece that may set them on this career of lifelong, not career, but this life of singing, and the way that can enrich us. Could you leave us for this program today with, when did you get the bug? So yes,
I'm so glad you asked.
Brady Allred
has
recruited you, but was there a piece? Was there a passage of music? I think all of us have that story, or when the tingles got so big on our body that we couldn't resist anymore.
Yeah.
What was that?
I'm glad that this is how the question finished, because as you started to ask it, I thought to myself, well, I've got the story. I hope this is what he wants.
The wind up and the
Yes.
pitch. Yes. Yeah.
So as I said, I left Duquesne and got a voice teacher back in Virginia, where I grew up. And then I eventually did transfer to Ithaca College. And I was a musical theater major there, and I was planning on getting my degree in musical theater and wanted to be on Broadway. And after the first year of being in the theater school, I realized that was really not where I needed to be. I really needed to be in the conservatory, really studying voice, because at Ithaca College, the musical theater majors study with the conservatory voice teachers. So I had been exposed to the music school, and I had already been a music major at Duquesne. And now I was a theater major, but every time I went to the music school, I was just sort of feeling like this is probably where I should be. And trust me, I would have loved to have been a theater major and been a really successful musical theater person, but that's not what was in the cards for me. So after my first year as a musical theater major, I transferred into the music school full-time as a voice major. And I can still picture the classroom. It was my first listening class that I took. It wasn't the first session necessarily, but it was the first class that I took really as a music major. And the professor played the Berlioz Requiem recording by the Atlanta Symphony with, I believe it's Rutter, conducting. Did I get that wrong?
Robert Shaw, probably.
Robert Shaw, yes. Yeah. Sorry, please edit that out.
All right.
That's okay. Anyway, Rutter is I don't even know if he conducts, he's a composer. No, it was Robert Shaw. I can't believe I got one detail of my favorite story wrong. Anyway,
this is good. It adds color.
It makes me human. It was Robert Shaw, Atlanta Symphony, John Ayler singing the Sanctus. The recording is on. He played it in that class on vinyl, and I was just about a year ago during the pandemic. I was able to find a still in the plastic vinyl copy of this that I now own. I'm not sure I'll ever take it out of the plastic, but anyway, it's this silver cover. You can get it on.
I have the CDs. Yes,
you can get it on CD, but you cannot stream it. It's not available on any streaming platform. You can only get it on a recording. So the Berlioz Requiem happens to be one of my favorite pieces of music. It's never done because Berlioz scored it for 16 double basses and a choir of 600 singers. And there's a brass quartet and percussion in each of the four corners of the hall. And it's just
you might as well do Mahler 8 at this point. Yes,
totally. Yeah. But no other recording even comes close to the extremes of this Atlanta Symphony recording, the terror of the Dies Irae, and then this Sanctus. The Sanctus is basically a duet between a solo flute and a solo tenor. And it goes up to a high B flat. And it is just the most moving, most incredible piece of music. And that was it. I was sitting in the classroom and he played the Berlioz Requiem and we got to the Sanctus movement. And I hear the most amazing tenor I've ever heard. And I think John Ayler's still alive. He's an evangelist. He does a lot of that kind of stuff too. But this is the most sublime piece of music. And I sat there and I said to myself, this is where I'm supposed to be. I did it. This is the right thing. And sadly, I've never been able to perform it because no one ever does the piece. But one of these days, if you do it, you've got to.
All right, I'll note to self. Yes, get me and 300 and 400 of my other friends. Yes, yeah.
I can already see the quartets in the corners of that church. Yeah, it'll be fine.
That's a piece I wouldn't mind doing. And now you're going to make me go home and listen to it this weekend because it's been.
I'm glad you have that recording.
It's been a minute. I'll just say
incredible.
That. So yeah. Steve, I want to thank you so much for sharing yourself with us today, especially for sharing that last bit there. You know, when you describe that moment, I think that's what we're all hoping that when we get together here in May that we're creating for, if not just for ourselves, but for for our audience and for so many of these young singers. And I just can't wait to be in the room, being a part of your gifts, both as a person, singer, and musician. I think it's just going to be so lovely. So really, thank you.
Thank you. It's really it's an honor. It's a privilege to have been asked. I'm super excited. Our conversation today has gotten me even more jazzed, and I can't wait to get there. I love Vancouver. I've been there a few times, but not enough, and I'm just so excited. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.